Madam Chair, Commission Chair, members of the subcommittee, welcome. I will now call roll. Emily Simnett.
Present.
Michael Dembro. Richard Devlin.
Present.
Greg Heeman.
Present.
Devin Lawson. Gail Yamasaki.
Present.
Thank you. That is roll, and we have a quorum. And I will note for the record that in addition to the subcommittee members, there appear to be several commissioners listening in today as well. I note Commissioner Middleton and Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Guthrie, and thank you to everyone who is in attendance today. My fellow commissioners, my fellow committee members, as well as staff and stakeholders. Today, we will not be taking any action. Rather, today is a really important opportunity for us to listen closely and with care to the budget to our budget discussions from the various stakeholders. You can see those stakeholders outlined on the agenda. It's an opportunity for us to ask questions of clarification as well. But I see this as a very important part of our process in developing the ARB, the agency recommended budget later this year. This session is really important for us to really understand a stakeholder's perspective and have the information that we need as we move forward in planning for that budget recommendation. So with that preamble, I think before we get into the invited presentations, that we need to approve the minutes from our prior meeting. Somebody.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Gail.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Commissioner Devlin and Commissioner Yamasaki. Then I'll call the vote to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let the record reflect that our meetings are approved. So then we will move on with our first item. Do we have first of all, Guthrie, do we have any public testimony signed up?
No oral testimony signups. There is one written item, 2.0A written testimony by Bill Knight, included in your packets.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that there is no public testimony, then I think we would, if Abby Lee is here, we can move directly into hearing from the Oregon Community College Association.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Just making sure technology. Chair Stimnet, members of the Finance and Achievement Subcommittee, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Abby Lee, Executive Director of the Oregon Community College Association, and I'm here on behalf of Oregon's 17 community colleges. What you'll see today is not a full Ways and Means presentation that you'll see next spring during the legislative session, and it's not a lengthy overview of everything community colleges do or all the ways we strengthen our communities and serve Oregon students. Today is something much more focused. It's a candid, targeted request to partners who know our work, who understand our challenges, and have been steady supporters of our community college mission. So thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. You'll hear us talk about critical service level because current service level no longer reflects the reality of our colleges. What we are bringing you is a clear picture of the dollars required to sustain the programs, staff, and services that Oregon students rely on every day, and the challenges that make this investment essential. There is no expansion package here, no extras, no embellishments. This is the minimum we need to keep community colleges working for Oregon. And when we say community colleges work for Oregon, we mean it. They work for the economy, for students, for communities in every region of the state. And that is the lens through which we built this request. We also, at the outset, I want to express appreciation for the input and counsel from CCWD Director Donna Llewellyn and Jim Pinkert and his team, who encouraged us to stay focused on what our colleges truly need to ensure that our request remains aligned with the guidance that HECC provided. So thank you also for your partnership and your willingness to engage as we prepare for the 2027-29 biennium. Your understanding of the pressures our community colleges face makes this conversation both possible and meaningful. And thank you, Guthrie, for running the slides for me. Next slide. When we talk about Oregon's community colleges, it's important to remember that each college is governed by a locally elected board. These trustees are chosen by their communities and they hold real statutory authority. They are legally and financially accountable to the voters who elect them. Our community college presidents report directly to these boards, which means every college operates with a deep sense of responsibility to its community. Trustees and college presidents feel the pressures of local workforce needs, demographic changes, and economic realities every day. And that governance environment matters. Our boards oversee budgets, they oversee program approval, and they ensure our colleges remain financially sound and academically strong. This oversight creates a culture of accountability that shapes every decision a college makes. Again, this also gives Oregon community colleges a governance model that is distinct from our university partners. Locally elected boards, each directly accountable to their own taxpayers, means our colleges are constantly balancing local needs with statewide responsibility. And you've seen that in some of our recent discussions. But they're still choosing to come together around one equitable, unified request. So when all 17 colleges align behind a single statewide funding request, it's pretty extraordinary. It reflects a shared commitment to Oregon students and a remarkable level of collaboration across institutions that often look, feel, and serve very differently, and yet remain united in our purpose. What you're seeing today is the product of accountability, collaboration, and that commitment to Oregon. Next slide. So I'm not going to bury the lead. The base level funding request for Oregon's community colleges is $908 million. This is what it will take. This is the critical service level, the minimum investment required. Again, I want to be clear, there's no such thing as current service level at any of our colleges. Every college has already moved beyond that point. Our colleges have been facing extraordinary cost increases, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. But we've been responding to these needs, all while staying nimble, adaptive, and deeply responsive to our communities. Our adaptability is a strength, but it has limits. We can't continue to stretch without a stable foundation underneath us. So when we say $908 million, we're not talking growth or expansion. We're talking about base level funding. Next slide. When we look at how our community colleges are funded, and this is probably a reminder for those on the subcommittee, but anyone else who's listening, we have three primary funding sources. We have tuition, our state funding, and local property taxes, and each one plays a very different role. And so we put the percentages here. Our state support is the largest share, and that's the piece that honestly determines whether or not colleges can keep tuition stable and maintain our programs. When our state funding falls short, tuition is a lever that many of our colleges have to look at to increase revenue, but that has a diminishing return. And we've had many conversations about this. Our community college students are especially price sensitive, and a tuition increase that looks small on a budget line can be the difference between enrolling or stepping away. And our local boards who have to approve tuition increases are often hesitant to do that because they know the impact on the students. And so they really struggle with these decisions, even when our needs are greater than tuition increases can provide. So we look at property taxes. Increasing property taxes is not a realistic option for for any of our operations. Because of Measure 5, local operating levies are capped, and anything above those limits is automatically reduced through compression. It's also important to remember that our state dollars are equalized similar to K through 12 students. That means that our per student funding is roughly the same at each college, regardless of local property assessments, which again creates a little more tension for our locally elected boards than other higher education partners. Our communities can pass bonds for capital construction, and we've been really fortunate across the state that our communities have stepped forward and approved these facility bonds, but those dollars can only build or renovate facilities. And in many of our communities, this still is not even an option for deferred maintenance or for other construction needs. So again, when state funding doesn't keep pace, our colleges face choices to raise tuition or cut programs and services, which ultimately means cutting employees. This is why the state investment matters so much. When the state holds its share, colleges can keep tuition affordable, maintain our programs, and continue serving students in every corner of Oregon. Next slide. So this slide shows the third option, and it's a trend that is our current reality. Colleges are increasingly reliant on reserves to balance budgets and cover shortfalls. In the last biennium, community colleges used $167 million of reserves. You can see the breakdown in the chart on the slide. Statewide, this accounts for 7.5% of current spending. And when you look at costs, 82% of community college costs are personnel, salaries, PERS, healthcare. So when reductions are required, this often falls on people, on our employees. There is no way to absorb cuts of this magnitude without affecting our employees and the programs they deliver, and ultimately the services that we can provide for our students. And so our colleges are looking at these reserve spending or reserve funds to shore up some of these costs, and this is not sustainable, but it's a current reality. And we really wanted to make sure that you had a look at what this increasing impact is for our colleges. Next slide. So the Community College Support Fund is really built from the ground up. This is our base budget model that starts with actual projected revenues and expenses from each of the 17 colleges and reflects what we need to operate, not to grow and not to expand. I also want to acknowledge the people who built the foundation for this work. Thanks to Chair Greg Heyman and community college presidents and business officers who developed these worksheets years ago. We have a predictable, steady model that allows each college to enter its real needs and arrive at its statewide number. That consistency has been essential for transparency and for planning. Again, this model does not represent current service level. I'm going to keep saying that at any of our colleges. It provides a composite picture based on real projections across the state. And importantly, it does not include reliance on reserve spending. If we were to include the level of reserves colleges are currently using just to stay afloat, the CCSF request would increase by almost 25% for the biennium if we included those reserve funds, which we have not included, but I think it's worthy of a conversation. We know HECC is using a 9.3% CSL placeholder, and we of course welcome any additional funds. If DAS sets a higher CSL, which again, we don't have that number yet, but if they come in with a higher CSL, these dollars would be used to shore up those reserve reliance and hopefully allow us some stability. So we would welcome any additional dollars, but we use the model that we've been using for the increases just to give that stability. The CCSF also includes several directed funds that technically enter our CCSF, but don't run through the distribution model. And I think that's important also to point out. On this slide, we've separated those out for you. You can see that distinction between the base funding that flows through the formula and the directed funds for correction education, contracts out of district, and distance learning shared services. Again, just wanted to clearly highlight those for you. Next slide. We also have some additional funding that you're going to see probably next month in your June meeting that shows total support funds for community colleges, but many of these are pass-through funds that are legislatively required, and you don't see them in our $908 million request because they're not part of the CCSF dollars, but wanted to make sure that you are aware of these dollars. Again, most of them are legislatively required. Many go to K through 12 programs, or they're pass-through allocations from other agency budgets, such as the Department of Corrections. The first generation grants in this additional funding are the only category that go to all 17 of our community colleges. Next slide. Deep breath. Across the state, our colleges are living the challenges reflected in these headlines. Tuition increases, program reductions, strained labor negotiations, and preparations for strikes. These are not isolated events. They are the day-to-day reality for colleges who are trying to balance budgets. And we're having to look at tuition increases and program cuts because current funding levels do not cover rising costs. Again, with 82% of college costs tied to personnel, budget pressures fall directly on our employees. These challenges are the cumulative result of structural issues we've been walking through: limited local revenue, rising costs, reliance on reserve, and a funding model that has not kept pace with what is needed. This is the environment colleges are navigating now before any additional reductions. It's why the CCSF request represents base level funding. Next slide, please. So I want to spend a few minutes making sure we share more about these challenges. Colleges, again, are facing a set of budget pressures that are unprecedented in both scale and complexity. Our compensation and personnel costs continue to rise. This includes increases to PERS, health insurance, contractual salary steps, paid leave Oregon, and now Senate Bill 916, which is a new reality for us. It is reshaping the landscape and appears to be increasing the likelihood of strikes and is driving up collective bargaining costs in new ways. We know all of our employees are also facing real financial pressures, and that's always been the case, but I think it's increasingly difficult to strike that balance. And for many of our colleges who are already looking at reductions, absorbing increasing contract costs will mean even deeper reductions to employees and programs just to stay afloat. PERS is a whole nother conversation. Alone, this is projected to increase almost 13% in the first year of the biennium and 10.5% in the second. We understand that HECC has some estimates that appear even higher. These are major cost drivers and they're entirely outside of the control of our colleges. Another major factor is the expiration of our PERS side accounts. Our colleges have been planning for this for years and setting dollars aside in reserves. And again, as we talked about those reserve fundings, we've set dollars aside in anticipation for deferred maintenance or for PERS obligations, and we're having to use those often just to shore up budgets. But as these side accounts expire next year, again, we anticipate PERS rates will increase significantly, and we won't have that flexibility of new pension obligation bonds because the interest rates are no longer as favorable as they were for our colleges before. So this is going to be a real challenge as we continue to try to keep as many employees as we can to serve our students. On the health insurance side, OEB plans are likely to see cost increases well above the 3.4% statewide cap. Even if OEB board uses more reserves this year to soften that impact, the cap is not sustainable given increasing healthcare costs. As more of these costs shift to our employees and our colleges, again, this pressure on college budgets and contract negotiations intensifies. Beyond personnel, inflation and operational costs continue to rise. Insurance, technology licenses, deferred maintenance, utilities, these are essential costs that colleges must keep pace with. At the same time, you know that our student support needs have grown dramatically, and you have helped support and champion funding for benefit navigators and basic needs. We have a number of services that we need to provide with mental health, childcare, food insecurity, and all critical to student success, but all requiring resources. Our CTE programs, we're incredibly proud of those, but they add another layer of pressure. They are the most expensive programs we offer and are also the most in demand. The cost of equipment, supplies, accreditation, and staffing continues to rise, and colleges can't scale these programs without additional investment and stable funding. We're also seeing cuts to what used to be reliable federal programs in our grants, which is forcing our colleges to absorb costs to continue serving students or reduce services. These federal reductions compound our pressures already coming often from the state level. And finally, most legislative sessions end with a few additional unfunded mandates or policy changes that increase costs. And we just hope that we can continue to have conversations about how we can meet these needs, but find additional resources to follow through with these requirements. Taken together, these pressures create a structural imbalance that colleges can't solve on our own. We are doing everything we can, using reserves, tightening budgets, and planning ahead. But many of these cost drivers, as I've outlined, are external and escalating. As a quick aside, as recommendations come from House Bill 4124 study, we hope to be able to partner with you to share concerns along the way to help ensure that recommendations will truly result in cost savings and efficiencies. Again, this is our work. We are steeped in efficiencies and shared services, and we welcome an opportunity to share more about this work as this moves forward. Next slide. As you know, our community colleges educate some of the most diverse and mission-critical student populations in Oregon. And as our president, Lisa Avery from Lynn Benton Community College often reminds us, we enroll the top 100% of students across the state. Anyone who wants to learn, train, transfer, upskill, or start has a place with us. Our students include high-achieving scholars and motivated transfer students, student athletes, career-focused learners preparing for technical, healthcare, and skilled trade careers. They include working adults advancing their skills or changing careers, first-generation students building new educational pathways, and parents and caregivers who need flexible, affordable options to stay enrolled. Our students come from every community and every background, and increasingly they are coming to community colleges. We are really excited to see a 6% increase in fall-to-fall enrollment statewide. That's incredible for our state. But this broad mix of students also means that traditional funding measures don't fully reflect our student population. For example, FTE doesn't capture the full picture of community college enrollment. If you take SHIO's report, which I know that you're all familiar with, our FTE funding numbers that are in that report, and you apply them to headcount, the comparison becomes even clearer. For every one FTE that we are funded, community colleges educate 4 individual students because many of our students can't enroll full-time. Our university partners educate about 1.2 students per FTE. So when funding is viewed strictly through an FTE lens, it doesn't show the actual number of students who rely on community colleges. And every student, whether they take 3 credits or 15 credits, requires the same foundational services that's advising, IT support, library access, tutoring, financial aid, registration, parking, and the full infrastructure required to operate a college. Again, it takes 4 community college students to equal 1 FTE, but each of these 4 students still needs the full set of services that make college possible and make it possible often for them to be able to transfer to our strong university partners that we rely on. Next slide. The students you see here were featured at the All Oregon Academic Team Luncheon last month. And we had student scholars from all 17 community colleges who were honored, and they shared what their college meant to them. These stories were powerful. stories of opportunity, second chances, determination, and personal growth. These students found their sense of possibility at a community college. And it really was inspiring to hear their messages, how advisors, faculty members, staff members reached out and helped each of these students meet them where they were and help them be successful. Their voices remind us why this work matters. They show us what happens when students have access to affordable education, small classes, personalized support, flexible pathways, and programs that meet them where they are and help them move forward. So we just wanted to share a couple of these quotes with you. Next slide. So you've heard our requests, you've seen the numbers, and I hope we've given a clear overview of what we need to keep serving community college students in Oregon. And while you didn't meet our students today, I'm grateful that you know that state funding keeps the doors open so we can keep serving the top 100% of students who want to attend college. Again, $908 million is the base level. It's simply stability. So colleges can at least build their budgets from a solid foundation. Finally, despite the challenges we presented, I want you to know we believe this is an exciting time for community colleges. Enrollment is strengthening, workforce demand is growing, and students are choosing our colleges because they see real value and real opportunity. But meeting this moment requires state investment. The needs are real, the pressures are real, and the opportunities for Oregon are real. Community colleges work for Oregon, and this investment keeps us working for students, for employers, for families, and for the future of this state. Thank you for your service and for your advocacy. Next slide. We appreciate all that you do to support students, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for a very clear and detailed presentation. And we do have some time for questions, and it looks like Commissioner Lawson has a hand raised. So Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Director Lee, for being here today. My apologies for the camera being off. It is unfortunately broken. But I did want to look at two slides together with you. Slide 5, if you will pull that up with me. It shows community colleges drew $167 million from reserves in the current biennium, about 7.6% of total expenses. And then moving to slide 9, it lists 5 categories of budget pressures, but it doesn't quantify any of them. And I'm wondering if you can walk the subcommittee through how those pressure categories map to the reserve draw and what that aggregate reserve balance at Oregon community colleges are, so we can assess whether $908 million addresses the deficit or just slows it.
So I can't map it directly, but I am happy to bring that back to you. But I will tell you that $908 million does not do that. Our colleges will continue to rely on reserve funding. They will continue to have to increase tuition, as you know, and they will continue to look at having to cut programs. So what we are bringing you, and that's where we have often come in, and the state has come back and said, hey, what would you do with a 10% reduction? We really are honestly bringing you, we need a $908 million just for the base level funding. And then our colleges are still going to be tasked with reserve funding reliance, tuition increases, and significant program reductions. I think what you're seeing in our request is a real pragmatic understanding that statewide, these pressures are for PERS and health insurance. Every agency is facing these pressures. It's not just community colleges. Our university partners, I'm sure, will walk through similar pressures. And so this really is a request that recognizes that as we head into the legislative session, coming out of the last legislative session, that these economic challenges are going to be statewide. And so we are really trying to bring just kind of a minimum pragmatic approach to the political realities and economic challenges that we are seeing statewide. Did that answer your question? And I'm happy to go back and map some of those dollars for you.
No, you totally answered the question. I really appreciate it, and I understood what you said. I'd love to follow up with you in an email, send you over that question, and if you could share your response with the rest of the subcommittee, that would be so awesome.
We'll take a look. Thank you.
Looks like Commissioner Devlin, is your hand up? Oh, you're muted, Commissioner Devlin.
There, you should be able to hear me now. I have a couple of requests and then maybe one or two questions. One, can you give the committee by email the tuition increases for the 17 community colleges for the current academic year and for the previous academic year? Second, can you tell us, not here, but send us for your pension obligations, what percentage of your employees are tier 1, tier 2, and OpServe? Because I think, like many employers, probably a great deal of your liability is a legacy liability, not a current liability. And then the other thing is, I'll keep it at 3. Should, I have to ask it here because I probably won't get another opportunity. Should it be proposed in the legislature that the Oregon Promise be phased out and those dollars put into opportunity grants, will the community colleges be taking a position on that? Will it be unified?
We are still discussing that. As you know, Oregon Promise is really important to our colleges. And so we're hopeful that we can keep those dollars. We understand the pressures, but statewide, we are looking at numbers that we could bring back to you to show not only the impact to enrollment, but most importantly, how many of those Oregon Promise students are graduating. And so we're starting to see a real benefit in retention and attainment, which I know is an important measure for you. And Commissioner Devlin, I'm just so excited that you understand our pension obligations and some of those challenges. So we're happy to bring this information back to you. But we are collectively kind of taking a breath on this Oregon Promise. It's very important for our community colleges. So you will hear from us again on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions for Abby? I am not seeing any, but thank you again for your detailed and presentation, and I appreciate the conservative nature of the request and how you explained that to us. That I really appreciated that, and as always, I appreciated seeing student voices represented, even if just on a single slide. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we are ready to move on to our next presenter. We have the Coalition of Oregon Public Universities. We are slightly ahead of the schedule, but if Mary Moeller and Ann Cudd and John Harmon are available to get us started on that, we're ready for you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Simnett. I think we're all here, so I think I can kick us off. So, hello, Chair Simnett and commissioners. My name is Ann Cudd, and I am honored to serve as the president of Portland State University. However, today I'm taking that hat off and I'm putting on another hat. Today I'm coming to you in my role as the chair of the Coalition of Oregon Public Universities, or OPU. OPU is the statewide group of all Oregon's public universities and was formerly known as the Oregon Council of Presidents. We appreciate very much your time and attention today as we present our response to the state's consolidated funding request guidance for the 2027-2029 biennium. And I want to be clear right at the top. The numbers we have submitted are directly following the instructions given by DAS and the governor's office to calculate our university-based funding. However, we want to emphasize that the numbers we have submitted will still involve significant tuition increases and very difficult cuts. These numbers do not represent the true additional investment. We firmly believe that a long-term funding sustainability strategy is needed to truly unleash the full potential of Oregon's outstanding universities, and we stand ready to partner with the state in that effort. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So I'm starting us off today with a quick overview, after which I'll turn it over to OPU's Executive Director, Mary Mahler, and OIT's Vice President of Finance and Administration, John Harmon, to walk you through more of the numbers and the context for our submission. John also serves as the Vice Chair of our statewide VPFA Council. So next slide, please. Although many of the numbers you will see in this presentation are troubling, and indeed many of the recent headlines about Oregon's public university landscape demonstrate the significant headwinds we're facing, I also want to highlight the good news. Your public universities are delivering for Oregon. We continue to successfully contribute to the state's 40-40-20 goals. The share of people with bachelor's degrees has climbed from 31% to 39% since the state started measuring progress on that. In addition, our graduation rates are higher than the national average. We're producing alumni who are ready to enter the workforce and live productive, prosperous lives. We also take our role as public service institutions seriously, and we're committed to deep collaboration and partnership between universities and with external partners. The logos on the right side of this screen are just a few of the ongoing projects and programs that demonstrate this collaboration and public service across all of our institutions. From researching the future of early childhood education to discovering groundbreaking biotechnology and harnessing the power of Oregon's sustainable natural resources. And all of this adds up to a really significant impact on Oregon's economy and our statewide prosperity. As the state focuses heavily on improving our business climate and attracting and retaining large employers, it's important to highlight what those employers are looking for when they are conducting site selection. They want a skilled, educated workforce. In industry surveys year after year, a highly skilled workforce is ranked as the top factor under consideration for site selection, ranked higher than available industrial land, regulatory environment, or utility costs. Oregon's public universities produce the skilled and educated workforce that will drive Oregon's economic prosperity into the future. Next slide, please. In fact, when put together, Oregon's public universities have a combined economic impact of well over $10 billion annually, spread out to every corner of the state. We directly employ more than 30,000 people and have almost 500,000 living alumni right here in Oregon, contributing directly to our state's economy and vitality. Simply put, Oregon's public universities are delivering for the state despite a very difficult budget picture. If this is what our institutions can do with a very limited level of funding, imagine what's possible with more. Oregon is in real need of a long-term higher education investment strategy, and we're deeply grateful to the HECC for your passion and advocacy for our work and for this sector. It's not lost on us that you all have been strong advocates for more resources. We stand by ready to partner with you as we chart a brighter future for Oregon students. But for today, I'll turn it over to Mary Mahler, who will walk you through more of our current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Cudd. As President Cudd mentioned, public universities are an excellent investment for the state. A degree from an Oregon Public University opens doors of opportunity for Oregonians and gives graduates the hard and soft skills that need to be successful. For every $1 the state invests in public universities, $10 is returned to the state's economy. This has enormous follow-on benefits to tax revenues, economic development, and socioeconomic mobility. Next slide. It's in the state's interest to have a well-educated population for many reasons, including that our revenue system is reliant on income taxes, and those with bachelor's and advanced degrees pay much more income tax on average than others do. In fact, nationally, 85% of personal income tax revenue is paid by those with bachelor's degrees or higher. Oregon's situation largely follows the national picture. There's a popular misconception that degree completion is purely a personal benefit. We know that having a well-educated population is a public good. Next slide. In addition to direct tax revenue, university graduates also utilize fewer state resources. Bachelor's degree holders utilize public assistance programs far less than those with only a high school diploma and are far less likely to be unemployed. This again highlights the critical need to make a public university education more accessible and affordable, so more Oregonians can share in this prosperity and taxpayers can save resources spent on critical social safety nets. We're also seeing that some employers are no longer requiring bachelor degrees in job postings. However, they are still hiring candidates with bachelor's and advanced degrees, whether or not they explicitly are required. Next slide. Oregon's public universities are poised to deliver the future of work to the state. This aligns with Governor's Prosperity Roadmap and efforts on workforce development in high growth sectors. Public universities are producing areas for immediate needs and for the future. Oregon needs to be prepared long term. You will see highlighted careers on this slide have degrees offered at Oregon public universities that receive the PUSF funds. I'll also point out that OHSU, not included in our highlighted list, is a critical partner when developing a future-ready workforce and offers many of these programs. OPUs are offering programs for the careers of tomorrow. Next slide. Public universities are delivering and producing graduates ready for the workforce. And we know that degrees mean more than just a credential. Producing productive contributors who are skilled in problem solving is a public good and overall benefit to society, in addition to the economic benefits. Oregon has made progress here. Graduation rates are higher than the national average. This is thanks to the efforts of our universities and legislators who have prioritized student success, especially over the last decade. Next slide. And I'll pass it over to John.
Thank you, Mary. So good afternoon. My name is John Harmon, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Administration and Finance at Oregon Tech. It's important to understand the historical and national context for our consolidated funding request. Next slide. Public university enrollment has remained largely stable over the last several decades, with a modest dip during COVID that we're still recovering from. Notably, public universities have more students now than in the early 2000s. Although the total enrollment is stable, the gains and losses are not equal across all institutions. We understand that demographics are changing. We know that future enrollment will be impacted. Often referred to as an enrollment cliff, it might well be better characterized as an enrollment hill. Next slide. So the enrollment figure is notable because our inflation-adjusted state funding has actually decreased over the same time period while the enrollment has increased. If we look back at biennium 1999 to 2001, public university funding was at $626 million. And over the 25-27 funding, when adjusted for inflation, it's only equivalent to $551 million. So as you can see, as the raw dollars increase, the actual value due to inflation has not increased. And that's despite having roughly 12,000 more students. We greatly appreciate, of course, the recent increased investment the state has made in public universities, as shown in the blue bars. We're deeply grateful for the advocacy and the engagement of the HECC commissioners on the importance of this funding. However, the reality is that those investments are only holding steady with inflation and are not keeping pace with the massively increased personnel costs. If we added the true cost into this graph, the picture would look much worse as costs are growing faster than overall inflation. Next slide. The result of this funding, as you know, is a huge burden placed on students in the form of tuition. Since the 1990s, the ratio of state-paid versus student-paid costs for a university education has essentially reversed itself. It used to be that 2/3 of the cost of education was paid by the state, while 1/3 was paid by the students and their families. Now the state pays a little less than 1/3, and the students and their families pay 2/3 of the overall cost. As highlighted in the HECC's recent cost and efficiency report, public universities are a great bang for the buck. We are efficient, but rising costs force the revenue gap to be filled with tuition revenue. Next slide. This graph shows total state appropriations to public universities per student FTE. Oregon is the red line to the far left, showing us as 46th among the nation in state funding per student. The gray line is the national average. The green lines are our neighboring states. As you can see, they're all significantly higher than Oregon. In fact, our neighboring states on average fund public universities at almost twice the rate as Oregon does per student. Next slide. Again, the direct result of that lack of funding is a much higher tuition burden for families and students. This graph represents the net four-year tuition revenue per student FTE. Once again, Oregon can be seen with the red line, but now that line is far to the right, representing some of the highest tuition per student in the nation. Next slide. This slide, I think, points out an important contrast between Oregon and our surrounding states. This graphic shows that the same data from the previous slides in a more specific way. On the left, you'll see Oregon's investment per student in public universities lags far behind our neighbors. And as a result, on the right, you'll see that the tuition burden per student and families is higher in Oregon than in all of our neighboring states. This lopsided funding makes Oregon public universities less competitive with universities in neighboring states and creates barriers to Oregon students attending public universities here in the state. Next slide. During the previous slides, I've talked predominantly about our revenue, but now I want to briefly talk a little bit about our expense structure. This chart shows our cost growth by expense category since 2017. The single largest increased expense was institutional financial aid. This is aid provided by the universities to students. This aid is up 68%. This reflects our deep commitment to affordability and access, even during difficult financial headwinds. The second largest increase was by far our PERS, or the Public Employee Retirement System, and those retirement costs, which have increased an astounding 63% since 2017. Other personnel costs and service and supplies expenses have also increased, although these are more in line with inflation. It's important to highlight the structural deficits facing public universities. Even with increased investment from the state and increased tuition, expenses have grown at an average of 4% per year, while revenues have only grown at an average of 3.6% per year over the past 9 fiscal years. Next slide. This is a good graph of how our public universities spend their funds. So for the university-based funding this year, we continue to be heavily focused on personnel, as you can imagine. We're very service-oriented. So as you can see here, nearly 79% of total expenses are for faculty and staff who make our universities run, primarily for salaries, health benefits, retirement costs, and other personnel expenses. This leaves only about 21% remaining for all other university operating expenses. Next slide. As you recall, In our communications with you on the budget note last year, we shared information about ongoing reductions happening across the public universities as a result of not receiving a true CSL or continuing service level budget, what we call university-based funding. In fiscal year 26, universities made $85 million in cuts, reducing staff by 180 field positions and closing a total of 540 positions. As you know, many institutions are already undergoing further programmatic cuts and budget reductions to streamline their operations and align with insufficient funding. In addition, universities continue to proactively seek opportunities for collaboration and partnerships that increase efficiencies and improve student outcomes. I'll go back to my colleague, Mary.
Thanks,
Next slide.
John. Thank you. So as we wrap up, I want to walk through the university-based funding request briefly. Next slide. Our university-based funding UBF for the 27-29 biennium is $1.159 billion. Next slide. Like President Cudd mentioned at the top of the presentation, our UBF will contribute to continued operations. However, we need to be really clear that this level of funding will include more tough choices and tuition increases. This does not represent additional investment. Next slide. I'd like to quickly go through state programs and statewide public service programs. We'll start with state programs. Next slide. Here's the list of state programs totaling $66.7 million. As you know, state programs consist of line item appropriations supporting university activities aligned with statewide priorities such as economic development, workforce preparation, and natural resource stewardship. Next slide. The statewide public service programs, SWPS, the Agriculture Experiment Station, the Extension Services, and Forest Research Laboratory are longstanding programs administered through Oregon State University that serve communities in all 36 counties and the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon. Next slide. Maintaining the effectiveness of SWPS requires funding levels that keep pace with university-based funding increases. When funding falls short, programs are forced to rely on position elimination and service reductions to manage shortfalls, limiting their ability to respond to emerging statewide challenges such as innovation, economic development, wildfire management, drought, and insect and disease outbreaks. Next slide. We know the HECC is currently reviewing our capital requests. I will just quickly show you our list, knowing you'll have more opportunities to engage with universities directly. Next slide. Universities contribute to the economy in many ways, including through construction and capital projects. Short-term job creation for construction that delivers long-term workforce development. As anchor institutions in many regions across Oregon, public universities provide physical spaces that support community. Next slide. And as I wrap up, I want to say I have heard I heard this a lot during my time in higher ed. You know, we're at a crossroads, and if I had $1 for every time I heard we're at a crossroads in the last, couple decades, I might be a rich lady. I do think, though, with the challenges our public universities are facing, the work of HB 4124 and the overall uncertainty we are all experiencing, this feels like that statement might be true this time. This moment calls for commitment to long-term solutions from the state, not retreat. And that's our presentation. Thank you so much for your time today, and we are here to answer questions.
Thank you for your presentation, and I also want to note that I appreciate the contextual information that was provided, and both the information about the actual request as well as the situation that the state is facing, and information about thinking about the future.
When you come back and be quiet because I'm speaking.
I think that we are about to have a question from Commissioner Lawson whenever Commissioner Lawson is ready.
My apologies.
Are you ready? We
Yes,
can move on.
Madam Chair. I'm so sorry. I was asking someone to step out of the room. I'm so sorry. I Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple of questions for the OPU panel. I'll direct them first to President Cudd in her role as OPU Chair, and then Ms. Mueller or Mr. Harmon can add if needed. Um, Madam Chair, I was wondering if you could have Guthrie pull up the slides and go to slide 23.
Commissioner Lawson, which slide could you describe the content that might?
I'm sorry, the slide 23, the one that discusses the $1.159 billion public university support fund request.
They're not numbered.
Is that the next one?
I believe it is the next one.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, perfect. So I just wanted to go over this with you, Madam President, and I was reading this and I thought it was really interesting. You know, it says we're still in a difficult road ahead. It says, quote, tuition will continue to increase. Programs and positions will still likely face cuts at some institutions, and that's like what we're seeing across pretty much every institution that we're discussing here. So I'm just wondering if OPU is telling HECC that even if the legislature funds the full $1.159 billion request, students should still expect tuition increases, and then some institutions should still expect program and position cuts. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, well, thank you for your question, Commissioner Lawson. And unfortunately, that's true. We are looking at just trying to keep our nose above the water, if you will. But this will mean that tuition increases will have to be passed on to the students, as well as I know that my institution, for example, will be facing some cuts to programs and to faculty numbers.
Okay, thank you. What would you say the PUSF number that OPU would consider a true additional investment, like meaning a number that would materially reduce tuition pressure and materially reduce program and position cuts? Specifically, I'm asking for the budget number, not really the general principle.
Well, that's a great question, and I hesitate to come up with that number off the top of my head. But it would be a significantly greater investment, I would say. Let me ask for Mary or John's support on this, or perhaps we'll just have to get back to you with a better estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, President Cudd, I think that's a great answer at this point. And Commissioner Loss, thank you so much for the question, because I think we do need to be prepared to answer that question. And I think we as a coalition know that and are working on that. And so we can follow up with you directly and
Perfect,
with the committee, of course.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would love that. And then I just have two more questions. Slide 13 shows the 1999-01 Public University Support Fund at $626.2 million in today's dollars. And then the 2025 to 27 PUSF at 551.63 million, also in today's dollars. That is a $74.57 million decline over 26 years, and about $1.08 of buying power lost before we even discuss enrollment or per student effects. And this concerns me. So I'm wondering, what would the 2027 to 29 PUSF need to be to restore that buying power of the 1999-01 level? And can OPU provide HECC a per FTE version of that same chart in writing?
Yes, we will follow up with you.
Thank you so much. And then last question, President Cudd, because you are testifying today at OPU, or sorry, as OPU chair, while Portland State is an Article 22 retrenchment, I want to ask you this as a budget accountability question, not necessarily a bargaining question. At the $1.159 billion PUSF level, maybe you know this, or maybe we could follow up over email, but what does PSU currently estimate for tuition increases, I guess program cuts, position cuts, and layoffs in 2027 to 2029? And then will OPU provide the same institution by institution estimate for all 7 public universities?
So again, thanks for the question, Commissioner Lawson. We are facing significant structural budget deficits, and we estimate that to be, or project that, of course, based on a projection of what we will get from the PUSF in the next biennium, but we project that to be a $35 million deficit if we were to do nothing between now, that is, keep tuition absolutely flat and make no structural changes between now and fiscal year 2028. So that's what we're looking at as a structural readjustment of our budget is $35 million, which is just roughly 10% of our operating budget.
Thank you so much. I'll keep an eye out for those figures in my email.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Devlin.
Yes. Some very quick questions and then a very convoluted question. Can you share with us what index was used in forecasting the decline in the amount of the PUCF as adjusted by inflation?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues here on that one.
Yeah, and I need to get back to you on that, Commissioner Devlin. I'll get back to you.
Second, this is sort of the convoluted. I think it's actually very noteworthy that the universities have stepped up to provide internal aid to students, allowing many of them to continue to attend or to attend in the first place. However, I wonder to what extent, because ultimately, when you're providing that aid, you're providing it from university resources. And if the state is not increasing their percentage of costs that are covered, that would tell me to some extent that those students who don't happen to be part of that internal aid, and in many cases perhaps are not eligible for need aid, are bearing the full brunt of tuition increases. And I know people sometimes think that those are the well-to-do students, but you don't have to have an income that's very high to be unqualified for any need-based aid. So how much, this is very difficult to quantify. Is this becoming an issue because you're actually transferring costs from one set of students to another set of students? So while we might not think that that adjusted for inflation, those increases are as high as they actually are, for some students, they're just as high as they're being depicted.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Devlin. That's a very astute question, not convoluted at all. So first thing that I would say is that by offering institutional aid to those students who can receive a Pell Grant as well as an Oregon Opportunity Grant, that they are bringing in revenue that actually does help the bottom line of the university. And if they were not to be able to afford that with our little so we do what we call the tuition-free degree. So we add the Pell plus the Oregon Opportunity Grant, and then the institutional aid is that additional. It's a fairly small additional if they get the full Pell and Oregon Opportunity Grant. So I think that's what a lot of enrollment management is about, is figuring out how can we price things so that we're actually making money on each student. Even and in these cases, in the case of the more needy students, we are leveraging their Pell Grants and their Oregon Opportunity Grants. So I would say that does benefit all of the students, including those middle-class students who are paying full fare. But that said, you make a very good point. There is what's sometimes called the donut hole, the middle of the income where they're not receiving aid and they're paying full fare. What we do try to do is keep tuition as low as we can, and we are able to, and I'm sure this is true across the Oregon universities, keep the total loan debt relatively low. But that said, there's no doubt some students that are priced out of the market, even for an Oregon public university education.
And the last question, I don't expect you to have this figure, but I know it could be calculated relatively easily. If we were at the national average of support per student FTE, and knowing that we actually only provide that state aid to resident students, what would the PUCF be if we were at the national average?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that really lines up with one of the questions that Commissioner Lawson asked, and we will get that number for you. Thank you for asking that, Commissioner Devlin.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for our coalition of public university folks? I don't think I am seeing any. Again, thank you all for being here and for your willingness to provide all that additional information. I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers myself, and just say appreciate all the work that you're doing in what is a very challenging time.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your advocacy and for having us today. Bye.
Guthrie, it looks like we are at a break. Is that what am I saying that correctly?
Yes, we're a bit early for our break due to resume with our workforce panel at 2:30.
If I am advocating for a break. I think that's a good, given the length of the testimony today. If we take a break, we're scheduled for 15 minutes, but come back, what would that be? I can't, this is math. Instead of 2:30, it would be 2:23. Would the workforce panel be ready to testify just a wee bit early to keep us on our early schedule?
Why don't we shoot for that, and I will reach out to them during the break and confirm.
Okay, so we'll break then until how about? Oh no, now the time has changed to 2:20. What is it? I cannot do math on I mean, I cannot do arithmetic.
Perhaps 2:25 to make it a round number.
Let's do 2:25. That should be great. Thank you. This is the hardest budget question of the day.
Well,
Okay, I will see everyone back at 2:25.
sounds good. turn it
I don't
Okay, I think are we ready to resume? I apologize for that my inability to like understand how time works. But thank you all for your patience with me. So I think that brings us then to our workforce panel. If our workforce panel is ready to present, I'll turn the time over to them.
I think at least two of us are here. Hi, Venkat. How are you?
We're very close to being back on schedule, but we were running a tad ahead. But so whenever whenever you're ready to begin.
I can go
Please.
first. I think I'm up first on the agenda, so I just joined the call. My name is K.S. Venkatraman. So, Chair and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I also go by Venkat. I'm here on behalf of the Technology Industry Consortium and the Workforce and Talent Development Board. I want to start with a very simple idea, which is talent is Oregon's competitive advantage. In today's economy, the states that win are the ones that can build and adapt talent faster and retain talent better than everyone else. And that is especially true in technology, but it's increasingly true across the entire economy. Oregon has strong programs. We have strong institutions. We have strong partners, but we also have a real structural challenge. Our talent system is too fragmented for the pace of change that we are facing. Employers don't experience education, workforce, and economic development as separate systems. They experience Oregon as one state. And so if we want better results, we need our system to work as one too. And that is why the WTDB should continue to serve as Oregon's unified workforce convener. I see it as the bridge between education, employers, and our state's economic priorities. And to do that well, the WTDB needs the formal coordination tools to align agencies and partners so Oregon can function as one workforce system. So I'm not proposing another level of bureaucracy, but a place where the pieces come together, where the signals from industry are clear and where funding can be tied to measurable outcomes. And those outcomes matter because it's not about whether we are actually improving talent supply or student readiness, but also employer competitiveness. And technology talent should be treated as economic infrastructure. That infrastructure also depends on skilled trades. I'm talking plumbers and HVAC technicians, welders and electricians who can build and maintain the physical facilities behind the rapid technological growth that we're seeing. And just as businesses depend on transportation and energy, they also depend on access to workers who can build, deploy, and secure these digital facilities. So when a company decides whether to expand in Oregon, one of the first questions it asks is very simple. Can we hire the talent we need? And if the answer is yes, the company invests. If not, it starts looking elsewhere. And as an example, when a few of us left Intel to build a startup company that eventually went under, but NVIDIA found the talent, they hired most of the employees and opened an office location in Hillsborough because they found the talent here. And they now employ more than 300 people in an office, a small office here in Hillsborough. So we're in a moment of very rapid change driven by artificial intelligence. It is already changing how people work, how companies operate, what skills matter most. And Oregon should treat AI as a lever for growth. That means investing in AI fluency across the talent pipeline. And the talent pipeline always starts with K through 12. But it also means strengthening the human skills that don't go out of date. For example, judgment, communication, creativity, adaptability, critical thinking, collaborative, and most importantly, contextual problem solving. And because we live in an era where abundant knowledge is always at our fingertips. So the WTDB originally defined these as Oregon employability skills, and they matter more as technology advances. And I also want to emphasize something foundational, and that is math proficiency. If we want stronger STEM pathways, stronger technical talent, and stronger earnings outcomes, we have to improve our math readiness earlier and more consistently. It's a gateway skill for future learning and for future work. And that is why AI in the classroom should be a funding priority for teachers and students. I say this because teachers need tools that support lesson planning, professional development, and differentiated instruction. And students need personalized tutoring that strengthens math and STEM and assists with their deeper learning. And this is about equipping teachers with better tools and giving students more individualized support so they can build confidence, close gaps earlier, and stay on a stronger path. CTE belongs at the center of the K through career pipeline. Students need awareness of jobs with a real bridge into them. So career and technical education should be connected more tightly to classroom learning, higher education, and employer-validated skills so students can see a clear path from what they are learning to where they can go. And that path should include more applied learning. So Oregon should expand internships, apprenticeships, project-based learning, excuse me, project-based learning, because all of these co-developed experiences with higher education and workforce partners and employers help students learn better when they can connect theory to practice. And employers benefit when students arrive with experience in addition to credentials. Cybersecurity is a core infrastructure area where Oregon must stay focused. Every sector depends on secure systems: healthcare, manufacturing, finance, education, public services, critical infrastructure. So Oregon needs to keep building a statewide pipeline into high-wage cybersecurity careers that through some short cycle training, stackable credentials, and clear advancement pathways. And we need to move faster on reskilling and upskilling. As AI changes the workforce, Oregon should help workers transition into higher opportunity roles through targeted upskilling and short cycle stackable credentials. So that includes not only tech roles, but also the skill trades that I talked about earlier that make AI growth possible in the first place. And again, plumbers and HVAC technicians and welders and electricians will be essential to building and maintaining the factories, the data centers, and the infrastructure that powers AI. And that is how we turn disruption into mobility instead of displacement. And none of this works if employer engagement remains difficult. Oregon should make it easy for businesses to participate, hire, mentor, host apprentices, donate equipment, and help shape the talent pipeline. And if we want employers to help solve the talent challenge, we need to make the system easy to navigate. And I also think it's important to say that the consortia should continue to evolve through continuous improvement. This model works best when it stays closely tied to real outcomes, employer demand, and better connectivity through the system. And as workforce functions move to the employment department, there is a real opportunity to strengthen alignment with the HECC, reduce duplication, and improve coordination. And that kind of refinement will help make the system more effective. So in closing, Oregon's opportunity is not just to respond to technological change, but to lead through it. If we align talent development with economic strategy, invest in AI and human employability skills, strengthen math and CTE foundations, build more applied learning into the classroom, and create a truly connected K through career pipeline, we can build a stronger workforce, a more resilient economy, and a more competitive state. So I know I had 7 minutes, so thank you for your time and for your commitment to Oregon's learners, employers, and our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think why don't we hear, can we hear from the full panel and then take questions so that we are is that okay with the panel? Okay, so we'll we have both to hear from the healthcare industry, Consortium and the Manufacturing Industry Consortium.
I'd love to follow Venkat if that's okay. My name is Brian Fix. I work at Sky Lakes down in Klamath Falls as the Chief Human Resources Officer here. And so I represent the Healthcare Industry Consortium. I served for a period of time on the STEM Investment Council with Venkat. We've both chosen to move to other things in terms of our impact and voice. And my reason for doing that is I used to work in the high-tech industry in Oregon, and I left Oregon mainly to get out of the rain of Portland. I moved to the Spokane area years ago, and I stayed in Spokane for about 12 years. And I recently came back to Oregon a few years ago now. And when I came back, I was disheartened at what I saw. When I left Oregon, we were the 13th most attractive state for business. Today, we're the 47th. When I left, we had much higher achievement in education, particularly in math and science, than we have today. And these are critical skills that are needed for the workforce of the future. I now work in healthcare and have been doing that for some time now, I'd say probably 12, 13 years. And in both industries, I work to build pipelines and career and tech ed pathways, both directly with the community colleges to do apprenticeship programs and things like robotics and such, but now in healthcare, working with high school CTE pathways in a rural setting in Southern Oregon. My story is going to be different than Venkat provided a lot of the really important overview, and I wholeheartedly support everything he said, 100%. What I want to tell you is a story about how to change rural Oregon. And we need to remember that rural Oregon is the majority of the state when you get outside of, Portland, Salem, and Eugene. And in these settings, we run into situations where there's a deeply underserved population, both in terms of the healthcare they receive and in terms of the educational opportunities available to our students. What we want to do is provide opportunity to students that would not otherwise have the opportunity or a career path into a well-paying job that both uplifts their community, gives them purpose for life, and creates a lifelong sustaining opportunity to end generational poverty and be a kind of working wage that moves their community forward. This is at the heart and the core of who we are as a community-based hospital. We are one of the last independent community hospitals in the state of Oregon. We also operate a medical group, and we've grown in time to provide most of the medical care in a 10,000 square mile region. We started some years ago piloting career observations with high school students into the healthcare careers. This year, we've expanded from 3 to 9 high schools. We'll be expanding this coming fall. And we built a CTE center at our healthcare campus on Hospital Hill, if you will. And the students are participating both in person by being bused in to be instructed there. And we have 2 new labs for them. But we've also brought in schools from out of the area. In fact, I just ran into 10 students in the hallway 5 minutes ago. They're from a little tiny town called Bonanza. Raise your hand if you know where Bonanza is. I'll bet most of you don't. Those kids drive in from thank you, Carrie. Those kids drive in from as much as 50 miles to go to school, and they're 35 or 30 miles outside of Klamath Falls. They are our rural and frontier kids. Those 10 kids were here to do labs today. They do it once a month. They're instructed remotely from the CTE Center. And what we're finding is that we find success in lifting up rural Oregon where we can partner as an industry sponsor with our city and our county school districts. But the underpinning thing that makes it work is Klamath Community College and Oregon Tech. And the reason that they're important and why it needs to work together in a full ecosystem of industry partner, higher education partner, and K-12 partner is that is the linkage that gives them the direct opportunity to, one, get dual credit pathways when they are in high school that are CTE concentrators. We know our CTE concentrators graduate at a much higher rate. They actually graduate at 98%, and they have a 95% attendance rate. This is the answer if you're looking for one. So you start there with CTE concentrators, whether it's in, pick an industry, but you have to have a strong industry partner. And then you need to have a community college system that underpins it with dual credit offerings and with helping our teachers be professionals that can come out of the professional space and not have to go down and take high school pay and work to be a certified teacher. That just doesn't work for the professionals. If you want good instruction, you need to have a way to pay these people and to have them be in the classroom through certification with KCC for these dual credit offerings. So that's what's working for us. We will go from 60 students to about 120 this fall in 1 year. Just in the core CTE teachings, we'll go from up to about 350 students across the whole region that will come in and do rotations in our hospital. There were over 900 student observation rotations this year. And what's really cool about this is the long-term pathway. So you're doing two things. One, you're creating students through senior capstones, whether it be CNA or MA assistants or other things, where they come out with a certification as a senior and they're ready to go to work. But they've also got the dual credit. So if they want to continue on the pathway, they can then go to any of the programs at KCC or Oregon Tech that are health related and create, the pathway for them to get to career quickly. Part of it's out of the way. They can earn and learn while they work and receive support from their industry sponsor. In our case, we provide several different pathways for them. We give full rides to kids that are going to the Surge Tech program at KCC. We give partial rides to the kids going to nursing. And then we have steps on the way through that nursing pathway where they can earn and learn as a nurse intern before they become a resident. This is really important for our students. And I just want you to see like how this can work when an ecosystem is built. Because even in our little community, it's now impacting several hundred students a year that would not have otherwise had access to these kinds of careers. So in closing, there is a way we can work together through this ecosystem to end generational poverty, to uplift Oregonians, and to create good working, wage careers when we build a CTE pathway, through to employable skills and multiple matriculation opportunities for them at their higher education institutions. So happy to talk more about that later, but that's kind of our story, and I'm happy to embellish on it if you need.
Thank you for your presentation. We will again have time for questions and comments after we hear from our final panelist. Is it Jonath Cullen?
Yes, it's John. Thank you.
Oh.
Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is John F. Colon, the Deputy Director of Economic Development at Centro Cultural de Washington County. And I serve as one of the 4 co-chairs of the HECC Manufacturing Industry Consortium. On behalf of the Manufacturing Consortium, which brings together partners from industry, K-12, community college, university, labor, state agencies, and community-based organizations across Oregon. From this statewide vantage point, it is clear that targeted, reliable funding directly shapes the strength and the stability of Oregon's manufacturing talent pipeline. Across the state, manufacturers are adapting to rapid change in automation, to precision production, to advanced materials and semiconductor process. This shifts demands a full continuum of talent, from entry-level workers to individuals with master's and doctoral level expertise. Oregon has strong institutions and programs that support this spectrum, but their effectiveness depends on predictable, strategically aligned investment. One need that the consortium hears constantly in Oregon's capacity to develop advanced talent is many manufacturers rely on specialized skills that come from graduate level education. While our universities offer excellent programs, our resident enrollment does not always meet industry demand, forcing companies to recruit out of state and even internationally. These challenges have become more acute. As many of you are aware, the federal H-1B visa costs continue to rise. Increasingly access and reducing financial barriers for Oregonians pursuing graduate degrees, certain in-state innovation, research partnerships, and competitiveness of local employers. Funding that expands participation at this level has multiple effects across the entire economy. At the same time, the foundation of the manufacturer workforce begins with entry-level roles that offer stability, benefits, and advancement, even if they're not traditionally categorized as high-skilled or even high-wage. One area that it's very clear for us is that short-term training and apply learning opportunities remain essential on the on-ramp, especially as employers report that many high school graduates today lack the hands-on experience that some of the previous generations had. Sustained funding across, got myself across here. I took some notes and I'm trying to stay on track. I lost myself, but employers across Oregon regularly express how challenging it is to engage with the education system in a coherent way. Individual districts, college, universities, workforce boards, and nonprofits all reach out separately with different goals and processes as they try to connect to system. This sometimes creates a fragmented way to connect with industry, making it difficult for businesses to really participate. A systemic or system level solution can change that. Rather than relying on isolated one-off partnerships, Oregon can benefit from a coordinated statewide engagement infrastructure, such as a model that would provide shared tools, common points of contact, unified communications across the entire K-20 continuum. With a consistent structure, employers can engage through a single connected system. And students benefit from more equitable access to career exploration, internship, mentorship, equipment donations, and apply learning. Funding this coordination reduces duplication, increases efficiencies, and strings across the workforce and education ecosystem. Together, this element graduate talent development, entry-level preparation, aligned pathways, and coordinated industry engagement demonstrates how interconnected Oregon's workforce and education system truly is. And with thoughtful resource allocation, the state can reinforce the entire pipeline, ensuring that learners, educators, employers, and community benefits from a more aligned and accessible system. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your continued commitment to Oregon learners and industry. And I and the whole manufacturing industry consortium looks forward to supporting this work in partnership with organizations across the state.
Okay, thank you. And apologies for not getting your name pronounced correctly. Thank you. Thank you to the full panel for painting, I think, a fairly very complex picture of the workforce needs of the state. We now will take questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Lawson, looks like you will start us off.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the workforce panel for your testimony. Also, Brian, rural Oregonian here, so totally understand the sentiment. I just wanted to ask the consortium a sequencing question. So earlier today, the OPU Coalition Slide 23 acknowledged that programs and positions will continue to be cut at Oregon's public universities under our current funding trajectories. PSU is in active retrenchment, SOU is restructuring, and community colleges are drawing reserves. So from the industry consortium's perspective, I'm wondering if your workforce demand projections account for the program eliminations and faculty losses that are happening across the state's post-secondary system. And then how do you reconcile workforce pipeline needs with the contraction of capacity that funds the pipeline?
Well, I think you've raised an interesting question that we're all dealing with, particularly in the healthcare space in Oregon. As you may know, the hospital systems have been very challenged to be healthy financially, and many have been cutting services and staff. In fact, there was a pretty public thing that went out from Asante yesterday about that. indicating that this year they would be $50 million underwater and shedding at least another 300 jobs. This is not unique to them. We are in a similar place in our location because most of our patients are Medicare and Medicaid patients, and yet the needs are not going down. In fact, the needs are going up. We've been growing services by 9 to 10% annually, year over year. We expect that to continue, but our costs are out of control. So one, this notion of needing new tech-enabled positions where AI, is enabled and letting us be more effective and efficient is important, but we still need the specialized clinical pathways and the current and more than the current graduates that are coming out of the state of Oregon, because we haven't yet replaced the aging baby boomers and the silver tsunami that we're seeing. So the cuts do not square with industry's realities, and it also does not square with competitiveness for the state of Oregon.
Thank you.
If I may respond specifically to Portland State, no. What we do is look at the aggregate of what we're producing in terms of talent across all our colleges and universities. And I can give an example of the semiconductor industry based on a recent talent assessment. And we looked at what our total supply was through our university system and what the projected demand is expected to be over the next 5 to 6 years. And then you see this gap between supply and demand, and it's a pretty large gap, about over 500 students a year, and we're not able to fulfill the demand. And so this is where what we want to do in the WTDB is to look at every economic sector in Oregon, understand supply, demand, talent supply and demand gaps, and figure out ways to go bridge that gap and make recommendations to both the governor as well as the legislature.
To piggyback briefly on what Venkat just said, I can tell you from experience, we're in rural Southern Oregon, 50% of our higher skilled positions, like not just the lowest level ones, they are coming from out of state now.
Commissioner Devlin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One question, then one brief statement. Do you think we are doing enough to guide students into what kind of preparation they have to have, particularly once they enter college? Because I think many times people are not making the right choices, or in some cases making the easier choice and not realizing what it's going to do to them down the road in terms of how much it'll limit their possibilities.
I can take a crack at it, and I'm sure Brian has more to add. So I don't believe we're doing enough, and the evidence for this is really based on, from the technology industry's perspective, is the foundational STEM skills that students graduate with in our K through 12 system. If a student is interested in a semiconductor track, the universities and colleges tell me that they don't have the necessary math skills to make it into a semiconductor track. So they have to put them into remedial math courses. And many students are unable to keep up and drop out. So this is why I was stressing on the importance of foundational STEM skills in our K through 12 pipeline. And as you know, our spending per student continues to grow, and yet our outcomes are declining, and it's been happening for over 10 years. So the short answer is no, and we need to do a lot more to equip our students with the foundational skills to be successful, at a minimum in the technology industry. But now these skills translate to many other sectors as well. I'm not just healthcare and manufacturing, even the skill traits that I mentioned. You need basic math skills to be able to build a structure. The pitch of the roof needs to know, you need basic trigonometry to be able to go handle construction jobs. So that's my short answer. Brian and Jonathan, you may have more.
I'm waiting for John if he wants to jump in. I can't see his picture right now.
Yeah, so we're in the same, thanks, Ryan. I think we're in the same space, right? So, there's been a lot of efforts over the years, I think, at this junction, the realignment of how we're doing this. I mean, we're having conversations that we've not had before, in a way where people are staying connected to the conversations to begin to change, to create this change that we need. It is something that this alignment, and some of the tools that are coming out of the work that's coming out of the consortiums, is going to both help both the instructors, the industries, and the students have more clarity on how these things aligned. As many of you recall, what we started with when we graduated was not necessarily what we ended at. And sometimes we think back about what fundamental skills would have been very helpful in those early to make career decisions later. We're also having a situation in sort of market, sort of across Oregon, where people are changing careers, and that change does not bring skill sets that they need, or access to those. So having those short-term careers and those exploratory items and systems to be able to build those skill sets that we're hearing are not showing up from the employer need. But we are in a very pivoted way in a place with the work that's coming out of the consortiums, how they're communicating across, and how they're engaging both the CTE college and grad work as we're moving forward to do more.
Yeah, I have 2 points on this I'd like to get across that I think translate at the state level. I think number one is science exploration, and particularly in middle school. My understanding is that there are statewide standards that are required, and yet the local school districts decide on whether it's taught or not. And that the teachers in many of the grades, I'm thinking like 4th through 7th, there's many grades in which they're not taught science at all. And instead they're just taught to a state test and they don't get science classes. And that shortcuts exploration and inquisitiveness that really help students learn early on, that there's something for me that I'm interested in that can be an actual career and that brings me joy. And that's a real miss in the state of Oregon. I'd love to see standards that are held and even funding that's held from the state that has to be done at that level. And then I think the other thing is I go to a lot of conferences and things of that nature. I was quite surprised last year. I was nominated as the CTE champion for the entire country for ACTE. And this year, Klamath Falls, for our health occupations work, will be the West Coast story in their 100th year anniversary conference. I think the reason that we captured their attention is that we're very, very present as an industry partner in the community and pulling students through. This is something we need more of in Oregon, and every conference I go to, I'm just one of a handful of industry folks there. And we need to have ways in which the HECC and others are engaging industry partners to pull and show and be present and have ways for students to do early career exploration and connect their interests and aptitudes, to the jobs of the future for them. And we will not capture their interest in their hearts if we don't do these 2 things.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, I just wanted to make an aside statement. One, to thank them for their comments. But 2, I wanted to, I guess it pronounces his name, been referred to as Jonathan. How do you pronounce your last name?
Cologne.
Cologne.
Yeah.
Your experience of, I think you started off by saying you moved from Oregon because you just couldn't take the rain. Back in about I know exactly when, 1979, I had one of the hardest professors I've ever had at PSU, Portland State. And she had been attracted from the Southeast United States. She taught for about 4 terms, and just could not take the reins. She'd been hired during the summer. She moved to Everett, Washington, and then Mount St. Helens blew or erupted. And if you know the history there, Everett was covered with I don't know, 8 inches, a foot and a half of volcanic ash. She then left the state of Washington, went back to Southeast United States, and I don't think has ever been seen since. She swore off the Northwest completely. So
Oregon has a way of bringing folks home. My family homesteaded Mount Hood, and I'm a fifth-generation Oregonian, so I came back.
yeah,
I am in agreement that Oregon, that there is rain here, but I am a transplant from Idaho, and I actually appreciate the rain having grown up in the high desert. I think we've wrapped up the questions for this panel, but I did want to just highlight a couple of things that I heard. I heard really strongly the need for greater partnership and coordination, and building on the models that you talked about. And certainly we at the HECC, we're not going to be able to do much about the K-12 issue, but it's good to hear that and have that contextual background. I also I think I heard at the beginning during the first presentation, the mentioning of the importance of teaching critical thinking skills, and that there are also yes, we need to nurture curiosity and math education and education in sciences. But I wanted to lift up, if I heard correctly, the importance of also thinking about our workforce as being well-rounded and critical thinkers and problem solvers, thinking about how that can come from exposure to a wide variety of teaching. This is me speaking, obviously, as a humanities person and a writing teacher, but I heard that and I wanted to just call attention to it and express appreciation for the recognition of the wide range of skills that our students, that we need to provide to our students to have a workforce that makes Oregon a great place to live, or keeps Oregon being a great place to live. So I think we are, if we're ready, we'll move on to our faculty and staff panel. Again, big thanks to our, no wait, excuse me, financial aid panel first. Thank you to our workforce panel, and then I think we're ready to move to our financial aid panel.
All right. I think Guthrie's going to throw some slides up for us, and I'll get started. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nathan Eisenhower. I'm the Financial Aid Director at Bushnell University in Eugene, Oregon. I've been in financial aid for like 15 years or so. We'll go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're seeing, mainly related to some changes coming down the line from the federal government, but also some of the programs that HECC and the state have been moving forward. So Oregon, as you know, faces intense competition, both for out-of-state students, bringing in out-of-state talent, and retaining our in-state students. That happens in part due to the fact that the Oregon Opportunity Grant and some of those other programs are underfunded, particularly relative to Washington and California. As complexities are added to the programs that the state does offer, those things trickle down to financial aid administrators, schools and colleges, and it reduces our ability, and this is probably my key point for this slide, is that those complexities actually reduce our ability to help counseling students, giving them good understanding of the various financial aid programs that might be open to them, walking them through and helping them understand federal student loan and other student loan opportunities, and helping them make good decisions about what is financially responsible for them. And so I would advocate that, policy changes, updates and amendments to current programs need to balance not only the idea of trying to get at an identified need, but also how that pushes its way down into administrative realities at the college level. So we go to the next slide. As we are dealing with in our space, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that's having some significant impacts on schools like ours. We have a graduate program for clinical mental health counselors, and some of the changes coming specifically around the Graduate Plus loan program are making it more of a challenge for us to help our students fund their program. Elimination of that particular program, it does threaten the viability of clinical graduate programs. Removal of some of the federal support through even loan programs also increases the risk for us as a school when considering launching high workforce need programs, including some other spaces within the health professions that we've considered. But again, those changes in federal student loan and other programs give us pause as we think about those things. Adjustments to parent loans, that's the PLUS loan program, and the new proration rules that are being applied to student loan programs through the federal government increase the complexity for us. And again, all of that results in less time spent by me and my staff being in high schools for FAFSA education nights and financial aid scholarship evenings with students at the high school level, certainly work even with our own students on campus, and development, time and effort spent by us in development of grant opportunities and other scholarships that we might make available to our students. The next slide. We've been presented with a couple of proposed adjustments to federal state programs. The first one being, and these were presented by HECC to groups of financial aid people. The first one being reducing, potentially saving some of the Oregon Opportunity Grant for set aside that would allow schools to have a little bit more agency in how those funds are spent, particularly in targeting high need students. I think, I'll speak for my particular space, and I would say that I have concerns about shrinking a program that we like already. The Oregon Opportunity Grant, I think, is effective. It's been proven to be effective if underfunded. And so shrinking that pot of money in order to put a set aside may not get the outcomes that you're hoping for. And in addition to that, it's going to add to that administrative complexity and burden for schools. And particularly at a school my size, the burden for the amount of money is usually, it outweighs the benefit from my perspective. Talk briefly about the next opportunity on that next slide. There's also the idea of phasing out the Oregon Opportunity Grant and reinvesting that funding into the Oregon Opportunity Grant. I'd argue that probably has some really strong benefits from my perspective. Anytime we can grow, again, a successful program like the Oregon Opportunity Grant, whether that's the award amounts, extending deadlines, or increasing the SAI limits, I think that's going to benefit students. I would argue, even though this isn't explicit in the proposal that we've seen, that cycling those funds into the community college Oregon Opportunity Grant allocations would make sense. And I'll get to why that makes sense. As I've explained that proposal to a couple of my administration friends, their eyes all light up because they think that means more Oregon Opportunity Grant for Bushnell. I don't know that that's necessarily the right call. I'll come to that in a second. I do think that this proposal might align our state dollars a little bit more clearly with the goal of getting funding to students with the greatest financial need by increasing money in the Oregon Opportunity Grant program. You are shifting some dollars from students who don't demonstrate as much need to students who have higher financial need. And overall, phasing out the Oregon Opportunity Grant from my perspective. And I'm going to speak a little bit towards what I would imagine the community colleges deal with. You're going to reduce the administrative complexity for them. But on my side, what I will deal with, again, at the high school nights, when I'm trying to identify different applications and processes for students, how they can understand their journey, maybe in starting out at going to the community college and then moving to a 4-year degree program, taking out the Oregon Promise Grant and moving that funding into Oregon Opportunity Grant actually simplifies those things. It simplifies the process for students as they pursue various financial aid options. And I think it makes that transition from a 2-year program into a 4-year degree a little bit easier, a little bit smoother. So I think for those reasons, that particular proposal probably has some good reasoning behind it. Those are my main things that I wanted to share with you. I'm going to pass it over to my friends from the community colleges, Brianna Slywester and Robert Huffman.
Hi, good afternoon, Commission and Madam Chair. We appreciate your allowing us to join you this afternoon. My name is Brianna Sylvester. I'm the Director of Financial Aid and Veteran Benefits at Central Oregon Community College, and I'll let Rob introduce himself and get us started.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Rob Hoffman. I serve as the Director of Financial Aid and Veteran Services at Chemeketa Community College. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. More importantly, thank you for the continued support of Oregon students. We appreciate your commitment to education and to the communities that we serve. At its core, we share the same goal, right? Improving student success, strengthening outcomes for Oregonians. From our perspective in financial aid, we see every day how state-funded financial assistance directly impacts whether a student can access college, persist through challenges, and ultimately complete their programs. State financial aid is not just helpful, it's essential. It often determines whether a student can stay enrolled from one term to the next. Today, we would like to briefly highlight what we're seeing on the ground, identify key opportunities and gaps, and offer strategic perspective on how funding and policy decisions can best support student success now and long term. Could you advance the slide, please? So I'd like to start with some primary concerns, beginning with funding. We're operating in an environment of limited resources. While we're excited about the new ideas and initiatives, the reality is that limited funding makes it difficult to pursue new programs without impacting programs that are already serving students. This creates a constant need to balance priorities, ensuring that we continue to support existing effective programs while also considering new opportunities. That balancing act requires careful strategic planning. When funding is shifted, there's a real risk in moving resources away from programs that are currently helping students persist and succeed. In addition to funding challenges, we're also navigating significant administrative complexity. We're currently managing multiple state programs, each with different eligibility criteria and application requirements. This creates confusion not only for students, but also for staff trying to support them. Many of our financial aid processes are still very time-consuming and still very manual, particularly when it comes to awarding aid, which limits our ability to serve students efficiently. On top of that, reporting requirements continue to grow more complex, require substantial staff time and resources. Taken together, these administrative burdens reduce our capacity to focus on what matters most, which is helping Oregon students stay enrolled in completing programs. And I'm going to pass it on to Brianna to go over our next few points.
All right, so you can advance the slide. Thank you. I would like to take a few minutes to just dig a little bit deeper into some of those key points and funding considerations. And so first, just in regards to the Oregon Promise Grant, we understand that the program has not fully met expectations, particularly in terms of improving retention, targeting the highest need students. We also recognize concerns about administrative complexities and overall effectiveness of the program. Given that, we support thoughtful evaluation of the program. However, as conversations move toward potential elimination or restructuring, we want to strongly emphasize that any reallocation of funding should remain with the community college sector. It is crucial that these resources continue to support our community college students, especially those in high-need populations, career and technical education, workforce pathways that directly contribute to Oregon's economy. In addition, regarding the Oregon Opportunity Grant, we understand that there is a proposal to shift a portion of those OOG funds into a new emergency program. We would encourage careful consideration of whether creating a new program is the best effective approach, or whether fully funding OOG could achieve similar or better outcomes in terms of retention. From our perspective, stability and funding is one of the most powerful tools we have to support our students' success. Each new program that is introduced adds additional administrative layers, increases complexity, and can create confusion for students trying to navigate the system. We fully support innovation, but we also believe in being intentional and strategic, ensuring that new programs are built on strong and well-funded foundation of existing aid. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to address retention and the broader administrative landscape. Student retention is closely tied to students having consistent, reliable financial aid. When students can count on stable support, such as what the Oregon Opportunity Grant is designed to provide, they are more likely to persist and complete their programs. At the same time, we are operating in an increased complex administrative environment. Changes to existing programs, the introduction of new initiatives, and the broader federal developments are all adding layers of complexity for schools and for students. For example, upcoming federal changes and broader policy shifts will significantly increase administrative burden for financial aid offices and in turn increase confusion for students and impact our ability to serve and support our students. This makes it even more important that we take a strategic approach moving forward. We recommend focusing on minimizing complexities wherever possible, reducing administrative burden, and prioritizing stability in funding programs. The ideas being proposed have real value, but implementation does matter. We encourage a long-term approach, fully funding the programs we know are working, taking the time to fully design and fund new initiatives, and ensure that any changes ultimately support student retention and completion. We want to thank you again for your time and your commitment to our Oregon students, and we truly do appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective with you today. Thank you.
Excuse me, next slide, please. Hello, my name's Eli Herr. I'm the Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships at Oregon Health and Science University. I've been in financial aid 20 years and financial aid leadership for 15 years. And what we want to talk to you about today, largely our portion of this presentation is going to focus on the impacts from the One Big Beautiful Bill, particularly for health and research institutions like ours, which are facing significant exposure due to the changes in federal law and the elimination of programs. Next slide, please. It's difficult for us to understate the loss of Grad Plus for our medical programs, in particular our MD programs, our DMD programs. We're looking at, once this thing is fully implemented over the next 3 years, we're looking at a cost loss of around $30 million annually in federal Graduate Plus loans. That, just to give you a point of reference, that's about 25 to 30% of all financial aid that we award to students. Some students returning this year or starting this year will continue to receive Graduate Plus loans, but it's heavily restricted, and many students are going to be found caught out, thrown through no fault of their own in the middle of their program with loss to critical financial aid. Students cannot take a leave of absence for medical reasons or educational reasons. If they do so, they will lose access to the Graduate Plus when they return. Students cannot change their programs, even for dual enrolled programs, like our very popular MD-MPH program. When students switch concentrations from MD to the Master in Public Health, they will lose access to Graduate Plus and other loan protections currently enjoyed by our student borrowers. Students must maintain enrollment regardless of any reason for dropping. So we know that students are, we have a very dedicated and very high performing student population, but things happen, accidents, medical emergencies, family emergencies. Any reason that a student ceases to attend means that they will be kicked out of the Grad Plus program, and it will not be there for them when they return after July 1st, 2026. And all students, that is regardless of whether or not they enjoy these legacy provisions, as I mentioned in my previous comment, will lose access to Grad Plus in 3 years. This is a devastating impact for our students, largely because they do not have, many of them, especially our DACA students, while they're high performing, incredibly bright, and working on degrees in much needed healthcare fields in the state of Oregon, they do not have access to a cosigner or the credit worthiness necessary to enter into the private loan market. And we'll take a look at what that private loan market looks like, which is currently the only viable option for students who are losing these access to these loan limits. The other thing that I think is important, and this is a gyration by the Department of Education, literally that happened within a 48-hour period. This is a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's important. The Grad Plus loan, until about 3 weeks ago, was going to be excluded from what's now called lifetime limits. So student loans will no longer operate as an aggregate limit in which a student can pay back or reduce some of their debt burden and regain eligibility for future borrowing. Instead now, those loans are lifetime limits. The door swings one way, and once a student hits that lifetime limit, they are out of the federal program. Considering the large amount of plus that students have to borrow in order to attend our programs, the likelihood of a student hitting that $257,500 limit are exceptional. It's a very high level. So if a student loses their access to this for either a leave of absence or they hit a thing called their expected time to credential, which is, they were expected to graduate in one term, and let's say they need an extra term or they need an extra year because they took a previous leave of absence. Once they make that transition from the legacy provisions into the one big beautiful bill provisions, they are going to be immediately kicked out of all federal lending. That means we will have students with high debt to earnings ratios because they're not working, because they're working in very difficult and complex academic programs, and they will not qualify for student loans, which means they have a lot of debt that they've already borrowed, no path forward, and no financial ability to be able to complete their program. These are in programs that the state of Oregon desperately needs: medical doctors, physicians associates, nurses, graduate nurses, DNP. What we're seeing is we're already seeing students starting to self-select out of programs because of uncertainty in graduate funding. And this is, of course, devastating to our enrollment levels in critical programs, but also will have the long-term knock-on effect of lowering our supply of qualified medical professionals in the state of Oregon. I do also want to draw your attention to another one last provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill. This is not as detrimental to us as it is to the community colleges, I think, and my community college partners, which is a new rule for proration for student loans for students who cannot attend full-time. Those loans now must be reduced in proportion to the level that the student enrolls less than full-time at any point during the year. That means part-time students, half-time students, students who have accommodations to enroll in fewer credits will all be subject to mandatory reductions in loan eligibility based on their number of credits. As we all know, our students have difficulty with food security and housing security, and reductions in these critical supports for those expenses are going to dramatically impact our students who go to access education institutions, as well as our own, frankly. It is a new law that takes effect on July 1st. We received the final rule and guidance for this rule on Friday, last Friday. It's exceedingly complicated. Our servicers, our technology servicers are not able to support us in implementing this. And schools are actually reverting to pencil and paper with a 10 key to try to resolve this in order to get the money out to students in time. It is a very difficult situation. Next slide, please. So when we talk about what's going to happen with the private loan market, so there are some options out there and there are some lenders that are better than others. In particular, state agency lenders like MIFA in Massachusetts, HESA in New Jersey, FIA in Pennsylvania, RISLA in Rhode Island, and others like the state of Connecticut, which has stood up a state level loan program, are able to offer better protections for students within their states. Other students are going to be pushed into higher interest rates as high as 18.4% for a student loan. The current plus student loan rate is just under 10%, with the unsub rate just under 9%. These students are going to have shorter repayment periods, meaning that the repayment period begins, if it's a 10-year note, begins at the date that the student receives the first disbursement, not the 6 months after they graduate, which means students in medical programs who are going to take 4 years of school and 3 years of residency are going to graduate with a 3-year period in order to repay their loans. This will result in refinancing and additional costs to students. We've done a back of the envelope estimate for true cost for our students who are being pushed into the private loan market, and we're projecting between a 25 and 50% tuition increase, the equivalent of a tuition increase for each of these programs, just to be able to afford the ability to attend. There will be no loan forgiveness or protections from limited protections from economic hardship. There will be no income-based repayment. These are notes that must be paid and repaid and refinanced if they cannot be repaid. The downstream effects of this that we're already seeing is medical professionals will be incentivized to find high-paying markets outside of Oregon because they will not be able to cover the debt that they have to repay. The costs are significant, and as I said, there is no income protections for these or public service forgiveness. They'll have limited ability to work in rural settings due to the lower pay and the higher bill and cost of the education. And students will be incentivized from lower paying professions that we desperately need, like primary care, pediatrics, and geriatrics. These medical, and I know that the HECC is well aware of this, these medical professions are a critical part of the governor's workforce development targets for Oregon, and they are essential to the future of a healthy state for all Oregonians. I want to thank you for your time today, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer anything that the committee or the committee or the chair may have. Thank you so much for your time today.
I thank you for your presentation, and we have only a couple of minutes for questions. It looks like Commissioner Lawson has a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question specifically for Eli. Slide 1 of your testimony, it states OHSU faces a phased loss of approximately $30 million annually in federal graduate plus loans, with MD and DMD programs facing the largest impact. I'm wondering if you could walk the subcommittee through what that loss means for incoming class composition, and whether OHSU expects us to change which students can finance medical and dental school in Oregon, and what populations are most likely to be priced out.
That's a great question, and one that the short answer is that we don't exactly know. What we do know is that access to credit and credit worthiness tends to fall around demographic, gender lines, first generation earners. We have had many conversations specifically at our university about the perverse effect of having to select an incoming class based on ability to pay rather than ability to heal. And that is of great concern, certainly to me. I know my leadership is focused on this. We have put together an incident team in order to try to address this. We have moved our start dates for our MD and DMD programs forward to take advantage of the sort of the last opportunity to retain these provisions for the next 3 years. That doesn't solve their 4th year in these programs, but it gives us more time to find solutions. But you're absolutely right, Commissioner Lawson. This is going to definitely impact demography, and the people that can afford it or can get credit are the ones that are going to be able to afford coming. And it absolutely is. It's a travesty I mean, I don't know how to describe it any other way.
Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, if I may direct a question to Director Cannon as well.
Is Director Cannon in the room?
Yep, for another minute. I'm gonna have to take
Okay.
off, but happy to take a question now.
I can go ahead and email you that question. It's kind of lengthy.
Yeah, please do. Let's yeah, reserve
Thank
the
you.
time for the panelists. Thank you.
Okay, we are at 3:30 and we are scheduled to move on to our next panel. But before we do, I want to extend one more thank you to our financial aid panel and to all of you who presented today. Really appreciate the information and the context you provided. Again, big thanks for being here today. Okay, and now we have our final stakeholder panel for the day, the faculty and staff panel. It looks like we have representatives from OEA, AAUP Oregon, AFT Oregon, and SEIU 503. I'll turn the time over to you and I look forward to learning more from you today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the HECC commissioners. My name is Johnny Earl, and I'm the president of the statewide SEIU 503 union. I proudly come to you as an employee on leave from the University of Oregon of 24 years of service as a custodial coordinator. I also attended that university many years ago, so I proudly wear the duck. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the 4,500 SEIU members working across the 7 public universities. These workers are essential to keeping our institutions running and are among the lowest paid public employees in Oregon. Most are career-long public servants who live and work in our university communities. They proudly display the photos of Benny, Monty, Hootie, Victory, Viking, and the Duck, and proudly attends most of the sporting events and the events of fine arts and music in their community. When budgets get tight, the choices get made by administrators and policy makers matter deeply. SEIU members and those who are not know exactly what I'm referencing. Members have the least ability to absorb the cuts in wage stagnation or reduction of work hours. Because of their low wages, they often do not have the financial cushion to fall back on. Along with the students they serve, they struggle with housing and food insecurity. Despite tuition breaks, they cannot afford to attend or send their children to the universities where they work, let alone live in those communities. The dynamics we're facing in higher education are not new, and the workers that SEIU represents have experienced some harsh consequences. We are seeing this play out right now at Southern Oregon University, where dedicated workers are once again being threatened with layoffs and contracting out. This is unacceptable. We need better. Some of the lowest wage workers at our universities are truly struggling with the choices that this commission and the legislators will have an impact on their lives. From 2015 to 2025, growth in bargaining unit pay has lagged inflation by about 5%. Over half our members worry about running out of money before their paycheck comes. 28% of our members are going into debt for basic living expenses. Nearly 1 in 5 workers pay more than 50% of their take-home pay for housing. Nearly 1 in 5 workers are worried about if their food will run out before their paycheck arrives to be able to buy more. 60% of the workers report that their workload has increased over the past year, from 37% in 2023 to 40% workers say they sometimes miss breaks or meals due to workload issues, up from 24% in 2023. As you consider the agency request budget, I urge you to center those who have the least ability to recover from economic shocks, frontline workers, and students. Budget decisions should protect and improve wages and job stability for lowest paid workers. Avoid shifting costs into students through tuition increases. And ensure that state investment align with access and affordability and workforce sustainability. Oregon higher education should not balance its books on the backs of workers and students who are already stretched to the limit. Harper?
Thank you, Johnny. I'm going to present next. Hi, my name is Harper Haverkamp. I am the legislative staff for American Federation of Teachers Oregon, speaking today on behalf of approximately 7,500 dues-paying union members across community colleges and universities in Oregon. Our president wanted to be here. She's in the next room taking another meeting. She is adjunct faculty at Portland State. Today, our students are being asked to shoulder more and more of the cost of running colleges and universities. Tuition and fees continue to rise, putting higher ed further out of reach for the very communities our institutions are meant to serve. Labor is in alignment with students that there are unmet and ongoing funding needs that are critical to supporting our student communities. A system that relies on low-wage workers to function while also asking students to pay more for access to education is not sustainable, nor is it equitable. But these two realities are connected. The HECC plays an important role in coordinating, funding, and implementing support for our student communities across the state. Several years ago, the legislature convened the Joint Task Force on Underrepresented Students in Higher Education, which delivered a report to the legislature in December 2022. Many of these funding recommendations to support students are still relevant today. One key report out and recommendation was due to the severe barrier for low-income students, that can be addressed by continuing to support robust financial aid funding and increasing allocations to the Oregon Opportunity Grant and grant programs for students with great financial need and underrepresented communities. This report, acronym JTUSHI, the JTUSHI report further recommended addressing student housing and childcare shortages alongside necessary investments in benefit navigator positions. For several legislative sessions, students and labor have rallied behind students' basic needs package, which followed directly from this report and would have delivered funding for benefits navigators, student housing and rental assistance programs, and textbook affordability through Open Oregon educational resources. Despite totaling just $22 million in 2025, these vital programs went unfunded. The JTUSHI report in 2022 additionally identified a large gap in understanding the needs for students with disabilities, and many campuses having inadequate resources and wraparound services in need of support, and recommended specific follow-up for students with disabilities. The report also developed findings and recommendations addressing non-programmatic and systemic barriers rooted in the overall higher education system we have in Oregon, its accountability, and a need for continuous improvement. The task force findings demonstrated that working conditions for faculty and staff and leadership decisions regarding funding impact students. The report recommended addressing disparities between tenured and adjunct faculty, broader campus community involvement in financial resource decisions, and recognized that the thousands of workers would be given additional expectations around supporting students from underrepresented communities. Hundreds and thousands of people compared to a handful of upper administrative leaders, moving those decisions down to them. And improving clear communications of student outcomes between institutions and the HECC through greater systemization. Some of these final system-wide considerations are likely to roll into the 4124 House bill discussion and follow-up, but others may not and shouldn't get lost in the shuffle. So to reiterate one thing in that report and that we are presenting today is that working conditions are teaching conditions, and institutional leadership decisions impact the most vulnerable students
in either supportive or deleterious ways. In the upcoming agency request budget, we hope that the Oregon Opportunity Grant, funding for need-based and underrepresented student programs, and student support such as benefits navigators, students with disabilities, and housing and childcare access continue to grow to meet student needs in these moments. And my fellow labor leaders are going to continue to discuss the ways that this critical student supporting work is done by faculty and staff, and the need to prioritize funding decisions that protect these students and workers, and also have accountability mechanisms for leadership to ensure resource allocation decisions are in line with our campus communities and that those financial hardships are shared equitably. I'll pass it on to Kevin.
Thanks, Harper. Hey, everyone. My name is Kevin Sullivan. I am a public affairs consultant with the Oregon Education Association. OEA represents 4,500 faculty and staff across 12 of the 17 community colleges here in Oregon. And I wanted to bring just the perspective of what it's like to be a part-time faculty member in Oregon's community colleges. So some of you may know this, but part-time faculty are not paid very well across the nation, and Oregon's no different. In 2024, the average for part-time faculty was 58 cents for every dollar that a full-time faculty member worked per hour. And I say per hour because it's a really good distinction. We're talking about like per hour of labor, part-time faculty make 58 cents to the dollar. That number's increased slightly with different collective bargaining agreements that have been settled since, but the reality is this, is that when we do not fully fund or fund adequately community colleges, the budgets are built off the backs of part-time faculty. It wasn't until 2021 that we passed part-time faculty healthcare, and then 2023 we expanded it to dental and vision, and we made some real progress to increase, the economic well-being of a part-time faculty, of being a part-time faculty staff member in Oregon, but it's still really hard to navigate that economically. I want to give an example, which is that, part-time faculty, there's a misnomer that part-time faculty want to be part-time, that they've got another job that they're doing, and this is like a side gig, and it's a myth. Most part-time faculty want to be full-time, they just simply can't. There's one member that we represent who's tried to become a full-time faculty member for over 2 decades and has been passed up each time. We have a lot of our faculty have to drive across the state to make ends meet, to do part-time gigs at different places. And we had one member who works at a community college here in Oregon and was going to get a second part-time job at another community college in Oregon. Ended up turning it down and instead took a job with Clark College in Vancouver because Clark College paid almost double. So not only are we not paying our part-time faculty well, but we're falling behind our neighboring states in terms of competition. I also want to be again clear that when we introduce legislation in the past for part-time pay parity, we're not asking for part-time faculty to be paid the exact same as full-time faculty. We're not asking for the same overall salary. We're asking for every hour worked that part-time faculty be compensated the same that a full-time faculty member would be per hour worked. I also just want to highlight that there's another issue in terms of community college boards and their governance structures. We have serious concerns that boards are oriented once they join the board to rubber stamp any proposed budgets and budget cuts by administrators rather than do what they were intended to do as boards, which is be a publicly elected check and balance of administrators. So in addition to that, we've received resistance from institutions and having their board members be reached out to directly by faculty and staff unless it's a public board meeting. Some boards don't even have their email addresses publicly available. And so I just want to highlight that, whatever agency budget gets put forward and whatever the legislature decides, ultimately boards then make decisions about cuts. Mount Hood Community College just approved cuts. At Lane Community College, they tried to put forward $8 million of cuts without saying exactly where the cuts were going. Also at LCC, we saw a total gridlock for 6 months because they refused to fill a vacated position as the board. So there's some it's not working great, is what I will say. We're interested in working with board members and administrators to making the governing of boards be more transparent, fair, and informed. And we think that a critical piece of being informed is to talk to the folks that make the college run, which are staff, faculty, and students. When we talk about cuts to programs, what does that mean? How does that impact students? How does that impact staff and faculty? And it's one thing to look at a spreadsheet with numbers and just say, okay, fine, we'll make those cuts. It's another thing to really truly understand what those cuts mean. And then the last thing I'll say before I pass it off to Victor is I would say that in an ideal world, boards to be truly representative would have a member of faculty, staff, and students to sit on the board in addition to the publicly elected board members. But I will pass it off to Victor.
Thanks, Kevin, and thank you all for your time today. My name is Victor Reyes. I'm the Executive Director of AAUP Oregon, speaking on behalf of our more than 3,000 members at PSU, OIT, OSU, and UO. So I'd like to shift focus from community colleges to discuss the structural inequities that are fueling many of the issues that we're facing or that we're trying to navigate at our public universities. While state funding is well below the national average for public universities, the long-standing crisis impacting our institutions has been exacerbated by administrative decisions that are backed by boards of trustees who have failed to do their due diligence or live up to their fiduciary responsibilities. The AAUP was instrumental in defining the structure of the modern American academy. And one core tenet of this structure is that boards of trustees would serve as a check on administrative power through their oversight and budgetary responsibilities. However, since the dissolution of the Oregon University system, the resulting independent boards of trustees have often served as rubber stamps on the administration's budgetary priorities and their narratives about the finances of our institutions. Due to the board's failure to fulfill their obligations to our public universities, we have seen real harm done to our students through rising tuition costs, unstrategic cuts to faculty and staff positions and program offerings, an increase in part-time faculty and staff positions that lack healthcare benefits, rising administrative bloat, and massive raises for upper administration positions while faculty and staff pay stagnates due to inflation. At a time when faculty and staff are increasingly asked to do more with less, the HECC Spending and Efficiency in Public Universities report found that operating spending on institutional support, i.e. the public university administration, has doubled between FY 2015 and 2024 and increased at an annual rate that was twice the national average. These dynamics exist because university community voices are diminished and siloed by the Board of Trustees. The students, staff, and faculty who serve as the beating heart of the institution only have 4 representatives on the boards, whereas the other 2/3 are government appointees with varying degrees of connection to the institution. This creates massive social pressure on the representatives of university constituencies to fall in line with the bulk of board members who do not currently work or learn at the institution that they are supposed to serve. The perspectives of students, staff, and faculty are further diminished and disregarded when public university administrations over-rely on high-priced corporate consultancy firms like Deloitte, Huron, and McKinsey to manufacture consent for austerity decision-making. The costly analysis done by these firms rarely uncovers creative solutions to the issues we face and instead offer the same tired recommendations that have fueled the crisis in higher education across the United States. For our public institutions of higher education to find stable footing and continue to serve our state, we must recenter student, staff, and faculty needs over the increasingly corporatized perspectives of our administrations and boards of trustees. And I'll pass to Johnny.
Thank you. Leaders of this state have many choices to make, but those choices need to take into account the reality that many workers and students in our communities are facing. The strategies that the university and legislature have employed are not responding to many of the challenges that we see in front of us. Clearly, we need to do more work as a state to ensure that the universities and our state can thrive. What we ask is that you make sure that those choices solutions don't further harm those workers that make each and every one of our campus special. Thank you very much for this time to consider our thoughts.
Madam Chair,
I think,
Commissioner
uh,
Lawson.
Yes, first of all, thank you to our panel for presenting your perspective and the information. Now is the time for questions, and as Commissioner Lawson has a question, so you can start us off. Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief since we're running out of time here. First, I just want to say thank you so much to Kevin and Victor, Harper, and Johnny for being here today, especially touching on Kevin's testimony as a student at Link Community College who currently experiences the chaotic administration and board governance at LCC, and now needs to transfer to Chemeketa Community College because of that governance chaos. I really appreciate that Kevin brought that up for the commission. I do just have one question for the panel. As HECC develops its 2027 to 29 budget recommendation in the coming months, I'm wondering what specific mechanisms would each of your organizations want HECC to use to incorporate input from your members directly? I guess this things from coalition testimony submitted by university and college administrations. I'd be really grateful for each of your perspectives.
So I don't know if this is a metric, but one thing that I think is really important, and so thank you for your question, first of all, Commissioner Lawson, and especially the insight that discussions with the administration and representatives of the administration should not be conflated as the perspectives of students, staff, and faculty at our institutions. And so I think that whenever possible, one really important way that the HECC can begin to build its relationships with the university communities outside of these types of spaces and these types of coalition testimony is by, when they are taking the time to have direct conversations with groups from the administration, they should make similar time to speak to the elected leaders at various campus unions. For thinking of, the University of Oregon, for example, there is a faculty union, a graduate employee union, a staff union, and an undergraduate employee union. And so either in mixed groups, because again, time is of course not infinite, or individually with each separate union, equal time should be attempted to be created, or equal space should be attempted to be created when HECC is meeting with administrators at each of the institutions to try to make the same type of space for the labor community.
I wholeheartedly agree with Victor. Maybe a broad survey, if we're looking for membership, maybe HECC could create a survey that would have hundreds of thousands of responses on funding priorities and accountability mechanisms. And like Victor's saying, town halls could be extremely helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the perspectives. If anyone else has anything to add.
I think I'll note for the record, there was a thumbs up from Harper. Are there any other questions for the panel today? I'm not seeing any other questions. So again, I wanted to I'll extend another big thank you to each of you who spoke with us today. Your voices are important, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear from the wide range of stakeholders of faculty and staff at the institutions around the state. So thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for this opportunity.
Okay, unless there's any other items of business that I am missing, I think we have made it through our round of panels. Today, we have heard so much rich information from such a wide variety of stakeholders. Yeah, Guthrie, have we missed anyone, or have we?
That concludes our agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we have concluded the agenda where we are about at the end of our time here today. Unless there is any, does anyone else have any other business they'd like needs to be raised or considered? Seeing none, again, I'll just wanted to extend a blanket thanks to all of the panelists and speakers who spoke to us today and presented really important information for us to consider as we continue with the budget setting, budget recommendation process. Thank you to the subcommittee members. It's been a very full afternoon, and thank you to commissioners who also attended, who are not on the subcommittee and all in the room. I will present a brief report on the information today that was presented, and also encourage other commissioners who were unable to attend today to review notes and materials submitted so that the commission has the advantage of having the background that was presented this afternoon. With that, I am going to call this meeting to a close, and wish you all a great, is it Wednesday? Wednesday evening.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. You too.